Mallory Greene wasn't just another face behind the counter at Arden's boutique in Ridgeway Mall. She was the face people remembered. The soft-spoken 24-year-old cashier, known for her meticulous appearance and polite demeanor, carried herself with quiet confidence. Hollow Ridge was a quiet town where missing person cases rarely went beyond family drama or teenage runaways. That is, until Mallory vanished. She was scheduled for a 2 p.m. shift on April 2nd. When she didn't show, her manager grew concerned. It was unusual for Mallory to miss work without a call. A fellow cashier and close friend, Tasha Bell, went to her apartment around 7 p.m. that evening. The door was unlocked. The lights were on. Her purse sat on the kitchen counter. Her phone was on the bed. But there was no Mallory. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through Hollow Ridge. Flyers went up, social media flooded with her picture, and volunteers combed through nearby woods and abandoned buildings. Local law enforcement launched an official missing persons investigation within 24 hours. Keywords like mall cashier disappears, missing person Hollow Ridge, and Mallory Greene case began trending on local and regional news outlets. Security footage from Ridgeway Mall became the first real lead. At exactly 9:42 p.m. the night before her disappearance, Mallory was seen exiting through the employee corridor, dressed in her usual jeans and burgundy work shirt. 30 seconds later, another figure appeared in the same footage, a person in a red hoodie, their face obscured by the camera angle. Investigators zoomed in, enhancing the image, but it only showed a slim build and an unidentifiable pair of black sneakers. Initial suspicion fell on Dana West, a coworker with a history of workplace disputes. Just a week earlier, she and Mallory had been seen arguing in the stockroom. Dana accused Mallory of stealing extra shifts and flirting with their manager, Chris Delaney. While Dana claimed she went straight home after her shift, her alibi felt shaky. But phone records and surveillance footage placed her at home. She was bitter, yes, but not the killer. Detective Andrea Lewis, a veteran in the force known for solving the inexplicable, took over the case. What she found in Mallory's apartment turned the investigation on its head. Behind the bathroom mirror, a loose panel revealed a hidden box containing $3,200 in rolled bills, 2 prepaid cell phones, and a pair of forged IDs bearing Mallory's face but with different names, Lexi Monroe and Cassandra Blake. This was no ordinary mall cashier. One of the prepaid phones still held a few unencrypted messages. The final message read, "Don't get cute. We had a deal. If you back out, you disappear." Detective Lewis traced the number to a man named Victor Ruiz, a scam artist with a rap sheet that included fraud, identity theft, and counterfeit designer goods. When brought in, Ruiz didn't deny knowing Mallory. In fact, he claimed they were partners. "She was smart," he said. "Helped me move merchandise online, took a cut, laundered some of it through cash apps. But she started talking like she wanted out. That wasn't the deal." Mallory's wholesome image was in pieces. The community that once saw her as a symbol of trust was stunned. Social media turned venomous, with hashtags like #MalloryTheMastermind and #DeceptiveBeauty trending on Twitter. Public interest in the case skyrocketed, especially among true crime fans who dubbed it the mall cashier mystery. Then came the forensic evidence. In Ruiz's warehouse, hidden behind a stack of broken electronics, investigators found a bracelet identified by Mallory's mother, along with several bloodstains and clumps of dark brown hair. But Ruiz had an airtight alibi for the night she vanished. He was under surveillance for an unrelated investigation. Detective Lewis dug deeper, questioning Mallory's acquaintances and colleagues. That's when Tasha remembered something chilling. 2 years earlier, Mallory had been getting strange messages from someone calling themselves Mr. Rabbit. They started off flirty, but turned sinister. Mallory eventually blocked the number and dismissed it as a prank. The break came when a tip led police to a storage unit rented under the name Curtis Bale. Curtis had been a seasonal employee at the mall. The Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, even a birthday clown. Quiet, reserved, and friendly in passing, he was largely forgettable. But inside the storage unit were unsettling items. Costumes, zip ties, a small shovel, a stained red hoodie, and a notebook. Each page was filled with obsessive entries. She said she missed the rabbit. She lied about him. She lied about me. She needed to be quiet. Now she is. Curtis was brought in. Under pressure, he broke. He confessed to confronting Mallory outside the mall that night. He claimed he just wanted to talk and that she had rejected him cruelly. When she screamed, he panicked. He forced her into his car and drove to a secluded area in Pine Grove Woods. There, he tied her up. When she begged to be let go, he said she called him a monster. That was the last straw. He shot her once in the chest and buried her in a shallow grave. Her body was found days later, her signature bracelet still on her wrist. The case made national headlines. The betrayal was too twisted for most to comprehend. A quiet man hiding in plain sight, a cashier hiding a criminal double life, and a friend who never saw the final cry for help. Curtis Bale was sentenced to life without parole. Victor Ruiz was charged as an accessory and sentenced to 6 years in prison. Detective Lewis closed the file with heavy hands. This case wasn't just about a murder, she said. It was about how little we really know the people around us. Mallory wore many masks. But in the end, it was someone else wearing the deadliest one. Mallory's story lives on as a cautionary tale about identity, obsession, and trust. In Hollow Ridge, a town that once prided itself on knowing its neighbors, doors are now locked. But there was one final twist, something buried so deeply in the evidence logs that it almost went unnoticed. One of the prepaid phones retrieved from Mallory's apartment showed several deleted voicemails. Digital forensics recovered them. One stood out. "You think you can just disappear, Mallory? Run off with the cash, leave us behind? This isn't over. You're not the only one who knows the codes." The voice didn't belong to Ruiz. It wasn't Curtis. It was a woman. Detective Lewis followed the trail, burner accounts, shadow wallets, and crypto exchanges. It led to a name she hadn't expected, Tasha Bell. Her best friend. Tasha, who had first discovered Mallory missing. Tasha, who had conveniently remembered Mr. Rabbit. Tasha, who had a motive no one saw coming. She and Mallory had started the operation together. But when Mallory grew cautious and tried to pull out, she made the mistake of trusting Tasha with too much. Bank records showed that 2 days after Mallory vanished, Tasha made multiple cash deposits totaling over $15,000. Surveillance footage showed her at an out-of-town ATM withdrawing from one of Mallory's shell accounts. When confronted, Tasha denied everything until she was shown the voicemail. Her face turned pale. She confessed. Mallory had planned to disappear and start a new life, but before she could vanish, Tasha tipped Curtis off, feeding his obsession and giving him Mallory's location. She hadn't planned for him to kill her, just to scare her. But fear has a way of escalating. Tasha was charged as a co-conspirator in Mallory's death. Her betrayal was the final knife twist in a case already drowning in deceit. In the aftermath, the media reframed the story, from the missing mall cashier to the Hollow Ridge Triangle. 3 lives tangled in crime, secrets, and obsession. And at the center, a young woman who lived 2 lives and died trying to escape them both. Today, true crime enthusiasts, investigators, and podcasters still analyze the Mallory Greene case. Some say she was a victim of her own ambition. Others believe she was a master manipulator who got too close to the fire. But the one truth everyone agrees on? In Hollow Ridge, things are never what they seem. The discovery of Tasha's betrayal sent shockwaves through the small town of Hollow Ridge. The once close-knit community that had rallied around the search for Mallory Greene now found itself divided. Tasha Bell, once seen as Mallory's closest confidant, had played a far darker role in the tragedy than anyone could have imagined. Detective Andrea Lewis felt the weight of the case pressing down on her more heavily than ever. With each layer she uncovered, the story grew more twisted. It wasn't just a simple case of a missing mall cashier anymore. It was a web of lies, betrayals, and hidden lives. While Tasha's confession gave the case a clear answer, there were still unanswered questions. The cold, harsh reality of betrayal hung in the air, but Mallory's life, what it had been, needed to be explored further. The detectives went back to the apartment Mallory had lived in, revisiting the scene with fresh eyes. Now that they knew about her involvement with Victor Ruiz, they understood the significance of her secret life. Behind every perfectly executed detail, from her immaculate appearance at the store to her seemingly untouched apartment, was a woman who had been hiding from something. Mallory had kept her criminal activities a secret for a reason. The stakes had been too high. As Detective Lewis combed through the rest of Mallory's belongings, she discovered more than just money and forged IDs. Mallory had kept detailed journals hidden in the back of her closet, all with cryptic entries. It was clear that her decision to get out of the operation was not a recent one. The entries described an increasing sense of paranoia, fear, and self-loathing. "I can't keep lying to everyone," one entry read. "But if I leave now, it's over. Everything I've worked for. If I disappear, they'll find me. Or worse, they'll come after me." The walls Mallory had built around her life began to crumble. She had been deeply conflicted about her dual existence, but in the end, the allure of escape had been too great. Mallory's growing fear had been palpable, but it wasn't just the criminals she had been involved with that she feared. It was the people she trusted, the people closest to her. Tasha had seen the shift in Mallory's demeanor as she began to plan her exit from the illicit operations. Mallory's reluctance to continue had been the catalyst for Tasha's betrayal. Her greed and envy of Mallory's seemingly perfect life pushed her to make a fatal choice. Tasha's loyalty to Mallory was never as steadfast as it appeared. It had always been a matter of convenience, one friend benefiting from the other's success. As Mallory grew more cautious, Tasha's jealousy simmered beneath the surface, her desire to control the situation manifesting in dangerous ways. For Mallory, her only path forward was to cut ties with everyone, including Tasha. But Tasha couldn't let her go. Not without consequences. She had already been in deep, too deep to let Mallory slip through her fingers. So when Mallory tried to back out, Tasha made her move. With Curtis Bale, a man who had been living a quiet life in Hollow Ridge, Tasha had found the perfect pawn. Curtis had always been infatuated with Mallory, but his obsession had been quiet and hidden. He had watched her for months, hoping for a chance to win her affection. He had never seen himself as capable of violence, but his twisted sense of justice was sparked when Mallory rejected him. It had taken just one conversation with Tasha to set everything in motion. She had known Curtis was fragile, and she fed his insecurities, planting the idea that Mallory had humiliated him. On the night of Mallory's disappearance, Curtis had confronted her outside the mall. The footage from the employee corridor told part of the story, but it wasn't until the surveillance footage from nearby stores was reviewed that more became clear. Curtis had followed Mallory to her car, his steps quiet and purposeful. When she had gotten into her vehicle, she had no idea he was just a few feet behind her. What happened next was a blur of adrenaline and desperation. Curtis had forced Mallory out of her car and into his own, his hands trembling as he drove her to Pine Grove Woods. His thoughts were clouded by the rage Tasha had nurtured in him, his actions becoming more erratic with every mile. He had tied Mallory up in a frenzy, desperate to make her understand how much she had hurt him, how she had rejected him. The moment she called him a monster, told him that he wasn't good enough, that was the final straw. Curtis shot her. It was a brutal, hasty decision driven by a broken sense of self-worth. And once the deed was done, he had buried her in a shallow grave. The investigation into Curtis Bale had been slow, but the pieces began to fall into place once the detectives found the storage unit. Inside, they uncovered disturbing details about his obsession with Mallory. The rabbit costumes, the notebook filled with sinister musings, it all painted a chilling portrait of a man who was unraveling under the weight of his fantasies. But Curtis wasn't the only one to blame. Tasha's involvement with the operation was far deeper than anyone had imagined. The money she had withdrawn from Mallory's accounts and the burner phones she had used to communicate with the criminals in the operation spoke volumes. When the detectives confronted her again, she broke down. Her confession was filled with regret and guilt, but it was clear she wasn't fully remorseful. She had seen Mallory as a rival, and the betrayal had been the final act in a long-simmering resentment. As the investigation continued, the town of Hollow Ridge remained on edge. The media frenzy that had surrounded Mallory's disappearance grew louder as new details emerged. The case was now not just a local mystery, it had captured national attention. Bloggers, podcasters, and true crime enthusiasts pored over the evidence, creating their own theories and speculating on the motives behind the crime. The town, once a quiet and peaceful place, had changed forever. No longer was it the tight-knit community where everyone knew everyone's business. People locked their doors at night, and whispers of distrust filled the air. The betrayal by Tasha, once seen as Mallory's best friend, had shattered the illusion of trust that held the town together. Months passed before the trial of Curtis Bale and Tasha Bell took place. The courtroom was filled with tension as both defendants faced charges for their roles in Mallory's death. Curtis, now broken and defeated, was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Tasha, who had once been so close to Mallory, was charged as a co-conspirator. Her sentence was lesser, 6 years, but it was no less devastating. In the aftermath, Hollow Ridge tried to move on. But Mallory's story had left a permanent mark on the community. The truth about Mallory's hidden life, her involvement in criminal activity, and her tragic end at the hands of those she trusted was a stark reminder of how fragile our perceptions of people can be. Detective Andrea Lewis closed the case with a heavy heart. She had solved the mystery, but the cost was high. Mallory's death had exposed the dark underbelly of a town that had prided itself on its innocence. And while the perpetrators had been brought to justice, the scars remained.